So I call on you maybe to talk about how we might be prejudiced when we hear the word chorus. We might be thinking only of singing or only of dancing. And I take it that you, like me, think of dancing in a very broad way. Any kind of gesture, any kind of motor activity is dance. It's not just fancy footwork, so to speak. And with that in mind, maybe if you could talk a little bit more about the singing and dancing, and in that connection, what role, if any, the appearance of a person focusing on the hair might have.
Well, it is absolutely true that when I say a chorus, it just sort of reminded me that people might be imagining, people standing in rows and singing, which would be an entirely inappropriate notion. These girls, very often, when they sing, and as you say, dance, it can be an actual dance in a circle, but very often they are actually singing as they are performing some action. Say they are waking up the bride.
Beautiful.
They are combing her hair, and as they are combing her hair, she might be sitting there and crying or just sighing. And they are singing as a chorus in her voice. And they're all there with flowers, with ribbons. They're taking part in decorating her hair, and that's, so to say, their song and dance. So it's not that they have some kind of moment on stage when they stop and they dance. No, the songs are all part of an action. They might be sewing or folding her dowry, her clothes. They might be dressing her and fixing her dress. They might be leading her in and out of the room because she's always put aside in sort of special room and then led out and led back again on various occasions. And every time she's accompanied by the girls, and every time they sing as a chorus and they dance. They might be engaging in dialogues with the groom's party or defending her against the groom's party, which are pictured as sort of attackers. That's what I mean when I say that they sing as a chorus.
It's beautiful. So singing and ritual action, which we can sometimes say shorthand is dance, is really all the event. And I love the way you pulled in things that we moderns would never think of as dance, like combing the hair. But all of it, the entire ritual scene is choral. And it's motor activity, stylized motor activity, and all of that, if Aristotle were to think of one word for what's going on, is mimesis.
Mimesis, absolutely. And that was so amazing to me when I looked at this evidence. That really struck me. And even that ethnographers who looked at this customs in early 1800s, so in the early 19th century, described it as a folk drama, as a performance, or better yet, they said folk opera, because really it is like folk opera. They act and they sing about what they are doing. They act and they sometimes speak in verse, sometimes speak in sort of in a special kind of verse that is composed in performance, and sometimes they sing set pieces that are composed in performance, and all of that as they act. So it was really, what was amazing to me is that when I think of performance or opera, I usually think, the way I think we all do, we moderns, of something that has a start time and end time. Begins at 6 p.m. But this one isn't. It begins with a betrothal, and for a week, these people live within an opera, as it were. The bride, as soon as she wakes up, she begins to lament. Her mother begins to sing in response. All these gestures are ritualized: how you welcome the guest, how you bow, how gifts exchange, change hands. So, and the amount of verse and song that takes place over the week was just stunning to me. It changed the way I think about what we think of as ritual.
And if there's one word, there it is, you said it, drama. the Greek word captures it all because it's action, but it's ritual action, ritualized action, it's singing and dancing, and by dancing we mean all forms of motor activity. And I think you said it all. I think this is a beautiful case of comparing one culture with another. And do we have to posit that what we're comparing is historically related?
Well, if you want my personal take, I think that probably there are common roots for that. That's what I think. Whether I can prove it is a different matter. But I think that when people say, well, is it because this is common inheritance, or is it because it is historical borrowing? I don't incline that way. Or is it because it's just sort of common cultural circumstances lead to common responses? Well, I think to tell the difference between common inheritance and sort of similar cultures is very hard, because the reason common inheritance survives is because the cultural similarities keep the same things relevant. So I think it's very hard to untangle there, but I personally think that it does not seem to me like a borrowing. It's too well integrated and seems too organic. It doesn't have that quality that borrowing always have, where you can sort of see how it fits in something that was there before. So I think that it is actually going back to a common source.
Can you think of anything you would want to say as closure? To me, everything you said already is perfect. As far as I'm concerned, it is a beautiful telos, but maybe a few sentences in conclusion, if you like.
I can tell you sort of the things that doing this work made me think about how we do classics and how we see ancient Greek poetry. One of the things that was interesting to me is the way personal emotions fitted into the ritual. So the brides lament and express grief, and that's already strange for us, because we think the wedding should be a happy occasion and so etc. And there are love songs, and they cry as they perform love songs, and that is true to some extent even when the bride is happy and when she is marrying for love. And there are degrees, of course. There are some brides who are reluctant to cry and need to be urged to cry. There are some brides that cry so much that they sort of astonish everybody. There is a lot of sort of personal. There were moments that are described by ethnographers that have, where people actually sort of break with the program of the ritual, such as the moment that I like very much, where the groom couldn't persuade the bride to take his presents until he cried and said, "Why doesn't she take them?" She was taking too long. Or when the bride lamented so emotionally that her father, who was supposed to lead her out to the groom, said, "I can't do it, go yourself." Go on your own. But what this example sort of showed to me is that there is such an interpenetration, even just a unity of personal and ritual, that I realize that even when I say things like, "Oh, there is both factors are present here," that is not correct, because this is mimesis, this is enactment. They become that person, the bride. They become the role for the moment. And as I was reading it, I kept thinking, the quote you were always saying in your classes, "You are the music while the music lasts." This was so absolutely true for those ethnographical descriptions. It's not even that there is an interplay of personal and rituals. That is understating it. Oh, another thing I suppose is that so much of what we have from ancient Greece is fragmentary. That's another lesson from looking at Russian evidence, and I realized that I was looking at the things and trying to contextualize them, but all the contexts I could think of were too small. Yes, there are these laments of the bride, and they are heart-wrenching, But yet, at the same wedding, on the next day, the same bride is celebrated as the best, the brightest, the happiest. And so when we look at the, say, fragment of Sappho and we say, oh, this is about a girl to whom such and such has happened, this is such a narrow way of looking at it, because it might fit into a completely different whole that we imagine. I'm sure that if you took Russian wedding and translated it into ancient Greek, and then lost most of it and gave fragments to classicists, they would never say that this belonged to the same whole. We would say, oh, this is a fragment of Iambus, it's probably Hipponax, and this must be a wedding hymn, and this might be element from tragedy, and we would put them in separate boxes. And that's, don't you think that's what would happen?
I love it. I think you said it perfectly, and it shows the power of the comparative method. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for this masterpiece of explication, of exegesis of text, and deep reading of tradition writ large. Thank you, dear colleague.
Thank you.